Alrighty, hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Mike Brasseau. I'm a Master Solutions Engineer with the Emerging Technologies team.
Hi, and I'm Dan Harrison. I work with Mike on the Emerging Technology team as the Enterprise Architect in the Emerging Technology Group. We're ready to show you a great demo.
Yeah,
Hope everybody's looking forward to it.
we're excited to share with you how to do an example of leveraging platform events to do streaming. So what we're going to be looking at in just a few seconds are quite simply just a number of Lightning components that have been built on, leveraging Lightning and connecting into the platform event bus. And what we're doing is we're going to be subscribing to that bus and leveraging that to stream events and then render the data of those events inside a Lightning component. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right in. Alrighty. So what you're looking at here are a number of Lightning components like I just mentioned. And you'll notice that so for example, let's imagine that you're in a call center, a customer calls in, and they say, oh, my product is broken. And you're thinking, oh, well, we just have these brand new products. They're now IoT enabled. Wouldn't it be great if we could get visibility into the performance of those products? So what you're looking at here is a standard object in Salesforce. It's an asset. Of course, these Lightning components don't necessarily have to be on an asset. They could be on any standard object, custom object. And what you see here are some events as they're sort of slowly streaming in. Right here down below, you'll notice I have a little electric imp. And that's sending off these events about one every second or two. And you can see those events as they stream in. Now, in the middle here, you'll notice that we have our chart. And it's gauging the temperature. You'll notice that the temperature says 25-ish degrees. Don't worry, it's not freezing. I do believe that the imp here is sending this in Celsius for whatever reason. So that's just fine. And what we can also go ahead and do is just take a look at all the other data points we're getting in from the platform event, right? We can see that there's a humidity sensor. It looks like there's a light sensor. What's interesting with the light sensor as well is that, obviously, if we go and we try to change that light sensor, you'll notice that the data coming in kind of spikes down as I close the box on top of it. The light has obviously gone down quite a fair bit versus after when I open this up, you'll see that the light comes back to something that's a little bit more normal, as an example, right? On the bottom, you'll also notice the same events coming in through a bubble chart. This is obviously pretty handy if you're trying to do something like looking for that outside of the range, those outliers. You can see all those dark points in the bottom left that just came in. On the top hand right side, you notice that we have a couple of different gauge charts that we've attached. The first one measuring the temperature, the aforementioned 25 degrees, followed by a humidity. And again, this is just taking the data as it's coming in from the electric imp and just rendering that in a dynamic fashion. A couple of neat things you'll also notice with the gauges is that we have set breakpoints. So depending on what those breakpoints are, we can change the color dynamically of what the value is on those gauges. In this case, we can say we're presuming that 38 is a pretty, orange or yellow kind of humid level. So that's pretty awesome, but you might be wondering, okay, that's great. How does this work and what does that look like under the covers? So if we go ahead and take a closer look, what we've done here is, like I said, is we've created a platform event. And just out of curiosity, has anyone here done the trailhead for the electric imp? Any signs of hands? Awesome. OK, so that's exactly what we did here. We went through that trailhead. We created the platform event. We connected our imp. And I added a couple extra data elements on top of that. But this is just point and click platform event, pretty straightforward. From there, we installed some new Lightning components, like I mentioned. And what we can go ahead and do is add those to our page. So this is an app page. It could be like an object, like I mentioned. So what I'm just going to go ahead and do is hit Edit Page here. Now on the left, we have our Lightning components. So here are the different components we just saw. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop the first one, the chart. And you'll notice a number of options on the right-hand side. First thing is the title. So I'm just going to say temp as my title.
It might be worth stating that this is on the AppExchange. I don't think we've spelled out that once you've done the trailhead for the electric imp, you got the data stream as a good example or good launch point. And the Lightning components he's using here are not ones that he's built just for himself. He's published them to the AppExchange. So you can go ahead and download these, So it really is just as easy as going and grab them, drag them on the page, and then start the configuration.
Exactly. So you'll notice on the right-hand side it has a pick list. This is just going out to your org. It's looking for the metadata to identify which events that you've defined in your org. You can see here we have a few. So I'm just going to pick the first one. Then, if you want the chart to default on a certain value, say for example the temperature, I'm just going to put that in. We also have a couple of formatting options in here. We can adjust the size. Likewise, maybe we might want to change the color slightly. Maybe blue's not so good for us. We want something a little bit more red. So we can go ahead and adjust that as well. Save that, and now we have that component on either our app page or, like I said, on an object. Likewise, we can go ahead and drag and drop the bubble chart. Bubble chart is just a little bit different because it has 3 elements, 3 data sort of sources that it uses. First is the vertical axis. So let's go ahead and say light. And then humidity and temperature. And again, similar formatting options as well as the title. And last, of course, we have our gauge. Going to drag and drop that onto the right-hand side. Similarly to the other components, I'm going to want this to do, again, the temperature. A key thing is when you put in the fields that you want, those are going to be the API names, not the labels, and it is case sensitive. So that's something to sort of keep in mind. And then down here, you'll notice the formatting options for the breakpoints, as well as the different colors of what happens down there. And I'm just going to go ahead and double check to make sure that this all looks good. OK, save this. And lastly, one thing you might want to do, if you're just starting out and you don't necessarily have a device and you're just configuring things, one thing that's really helpful is we have a platform event simulator. So we can go ahead and just drag and drop this onto our page as well. And this is just going to allow us to sort of test things out, make sure things work OK, especially if we're doing our IoT orchestrations or workflows. All right, so from here now, we've drag and dropped those components on the page. I can go ahead and just enter the values. You'll notice on the component, on the simulator there, it has the humidity, the temperature, and the light. That's because, again, it's using the metadata to identify what are the key elements you added to your platform event, and then just rendering those dynamically on the fly. So I don't have to go ahead and do any configuration like that. So let's go ahead and add this, send the event. And all things considered, little warning on the configuration on one of these components. But you'll notice on the right-hand side that we got the chart to render appropriately. So that's just drag and drop configuration using Lightning components to get that going. All right.
So if you throw up another event just to see the graphing on the temperature one, pick a slightly higher temperature and you start to see and change the temperature up or down a little bit, and you'll start to see the graph. Yeah, we obviously have a typo in the event monitoring one there on the bottom, but we can ignore that. You saw it working before. So you can see how quickly this then becomes blended into a feel of a dashboard. But it's using real-time platform events, which really drives that ability to see real-time information. That's the nice thing about the platform events that are being used here, and the components that Mike has put together with others on our team to make it available for you to make use of it as well. I've seen this used a lot, putting this information right inside of an asset object. If you're getting streaming data from a real IoT thing or feedback from other information we'll talk about in a minute, when I look at the asset, I can now see in real time what the temperature is and what the changes are, or the gauge, using the gauge to provide that information. Because it's coming in very fast. I'm not refreshing the page, and I would have to build a Lightning component to take that. Now I can use these things right off the App Exchange and track those platform events in real time on the screen with history. And I love the fact that you encoded in here the ability to capture the history as I change through the different opportunities, like you were doing light, humidity, and temperature on the first one. So it doesn't reset the component, which is so common. You lose the history. This one will pick it up from the point you open the page and give you that historical information. It's really powerful.
Yeah, so
I use it a lot.
The platform event bus does retain the information for about 24 hours. So these components can render the historical information on a page, if that's one of the options, if that's what you want to do. All right. So how does this work under the covers? Firstly, of course, one key component of this is the platform events. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
So as I was mentioning, platform events is a really big component of what Salesforce provides that you haven't really had access to before. Platform events gives you as Mike said, 24 hours worth of historical data, which is really great. So if you think about this kind of as an enterprise service bus, you'll be thinking in the right mindset. I was a part of the build for the Robotics Ridge. Every one of those robots is sending information as a platform event. This is really different than just sending an API. When you send a platform event, you're announcing a piece of information, but you're not necessarily telling people what to do with it. And that's how Mike's component is able to work, is that as the external apps or even internal apps post a message to the platform event, what happens is it's now the responsibility of Mike's component to follow that information and decide what to do with it. So on the bottom half of the screen here, we've got Comet D and Apex Triggers as an example. That's where Mike's components sit as well. It's monitoring what's going on that platform event, and the component determines what it's going to do with it, how it's going to display it. So it really gives us as developers a really good place to have a demarcation point. In the robotics example, that when you're over there, the handoff between the arm robot and the gantry robot, which is moving things, is done through a platform event. But if I code that as an API, it's a one-to-one connection. When you program it as a platform event, when the first robot delivers the ball, the platform event fires. And now business process, the other robots, alert information, all can subscribe to that platform event and initiate the process. So I don't need to go back to those external apps, those external systems, or the Salesforce systems and ask them to change the code. I get that as a pub-sub, publish and subscribe model. And this is a really big thing for us at Salesforce as developers, to be able to create that demarcation point and have a lot more logic to the way we build our applications. So I do encourage you to check out the robotics. They'll step you through what's going on there and how the platform events are involved. It's also how IoT Cloud layers on gathering information. So Salesforce is building a lot of our new capabilities and a lot of new processes on the platform event model. You're going to see it very heavily used and a lot of great announcements coming out with over the next 12 months or so.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So these components specifically, what we've done, like it was mentioned, was we plugged right into the platform event bus. And what happened was, you can see that there are, on the right-hand side, a number of different components. Underneath the covers there's basically a little event hub, we're calling it, which manages the connectivity between the client, which is just the web browser or the mobile app, and Salesforce, where those data points are coming in. Obviously, that data can come in from any number of different sources. Clearly here we had an electric imp, but it can come from other systems, other IoT devices, you name it. It's an open platform to publish those events. So a couple key things, and for me, why I'm so excited about this is built in Lightning, and this is super exciting because there are a number of different places where you can leverage this. Obviously, you can incorporate this directly into the Salesforce UI that your team uses today if you're on Lightning. Likewise, you can include it in the Lightning Service Console, or even you can include it on a mobile app, so through Salesforce One, or through a Salesforce community if you want to have partners that you need to expose this kind of information out to. That's also something that's available. As Dan mentioned, there is a Salesforce Labs app package up there right now that you can go ahead and download into your org. We're in the middle of updating it with some more charts, so it'll get a little bit better shortly. But in addition, we've also made available the code of what we showed you today. So if you guys want to go ahead and check that out as well. As you can tell from the demo, we did have 3 charts. But of course, the world is up to you what kind of charts you might want to build. If you want to imagine, if you have your own favorite charting library, this is obviously just a framework, a sort of example of what you can look at to sort of inspire and think about other things that you could do for your customers and your colleagues.
Or if you install it from the App Exchange and like it, give it great feedback and tell us what you'd like to see added, and that's how we personally start adding more things into it. So we'd love to get some of that feedback, where you're using it, and maybe some of the charts that we can expand into, because we're mostly just doing this in our spare time for fun to get some of the tools we like out to you as developers. So,
yeah. All right, awesome. So a few other things. So like I mentioned, if the other key thing to do if you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend that you try the Trailhead for the Electric Imp. It's a lot of fun. It's really awesome to get something connected. It's really easy and straightforward, so it's something I highly recommend as well. Go ahead and also try to build some IoT orchestrations. Something I also highly recommend that you do, get some of those automations going, and then of course incorporate those charts on top. Dan mentioned that there's the robotics off the side. I also recommend you guys take a look at that. We'll be sticking around for a few minutes afterwards if anyone has any questions, so thank you guys very much for your time, and we appreciate any feedback that you might have.
Thanks a lot.